What up, what up, what up, y'all? Welcome back to Genius as Fuck. That's Little J Big AF. My name is Solo, and this is.
What's going on, Slim?
Yeah, and we're going to talk about relationships, specifically marriages, and unfortunately, neither me nor my associate here are gay or lesbian or trans or anything of that nature. So it's not going to be fully all-encompassing, just pointing out our bias. It's going to be a pretty heteronormative chat. Doesn't mean you got to go away anywhere. And if you catch us on YouTube, where all of this will be put, unless you're watching it on YouTube right now, in which case you already know that, there you can go ahead and respond in the comments and see how we differ and how we're the same, and really connect on that level. But starting off, I think we both said that we wanted to talk about the history specifically of marriages, if not how that relates to just a general romantic relationship. And I was going to let you get started on that. Go for it.
Right. So when you go back to earlier civilizations, earlier cultures, right?
Mm-hmm.
Marriage was less about the love, the connection, the best friend. It was at times used for its own purposes. Marriage was used as a tool to serve whatever purposes that someone needed. So if they needed an alliance to stop two countries from fighting, right, you would see the daughter of one king and the husband or the son of another kingdom or whatever it was, they would get married in order to form a union or alliance so they could stop fighting and killing each other.
True.
So that kind of, when you look at that, it's kind of like, okay, well, so people are just being married off. It's arranged marriages, and that ties into other cultures. So you see, like in cultures like, I would say some Islamic cultures where you still see arranged marriages as a part of the normal part of their lifestyle.
Yeah.
And that's cool. And that ties back to, like, the history of things as well. You've also seen marriage used in the past as, honestly, a weapon for men in some regards, as a way to control women.
Very true.
Not to throw a random aspect, but you see something like that show Game of Thrones. I'm not sure if you watched that at all, bro.
A little bit.
But marriage was used as a weapon, not only to control women, but to control power.
Yeah.
And so that kind of differs a lot from today, and we all recognize that marriage is completely different today, especially in our Western civilization.
100%.
But that's kind of a little bit of the history of marriage, and then there's obviously the religious aspect. If you want to talk a little bit, possibly about some of the religious things that went on with marriage back in the day.
I'm not going to get into religion quite yet. I wanted to take a step back and narrow down on a couple things, historically speaking, especially as it pertains to Black American culture. Probably that expands to Black European culture to some degree, probably more so in some ways, and even parts of Africa. So Black African culture, and then brown people across the board in different places, depending on the time frame, even up to and including the current day in some places, although it's kind of under the radar. And not to immediately pull the black card, but fuck it, if that's the only card I got. No, I'm I think a lot of people disregard the history of marriage through slavery. Both, if you're talking about an individual enslaved person, both before they were enslaved, during, and afterwards, because there was a point, whatever the African culture was, whatever the nation, the tribe, etc. was, they had their own form of marriage. And then, the big boat ride, over to the States to do unpaid labor, as a handful of people like to obfuscate history with. Slavery is what we call it now, but yeah, whatever. Uh, and they would use these people, and they would kind of, I guess they would literally just breed people together, but whoever you were married to initially, you more than likely wouldn't be married to by the end of your life, whenever that would be. God willing,
Right.
died of natural causes, but that's not typical. You were used like a pack animal, like a farm tool. So you were used until you broke, and then you were cast aside. And you were bred with whoever they felt like would, produce essentially better livestock. And I hate to say it like that because we're talking about human beings, but that's the nature of the beast. But yeah, like you were, no matter who you were married to initially, you would also be bred with, and like in some weird dystopian sort of sense, married to your breeding partner, and that would just be who you were with. And then there's another layer of subtext down. They would also keep track of who you were married to, like truly, like who you were romantically involved with, and then who you were bred with, and they would use those people against the male enslaved people to attempt to persuade you to do something or dissuade you from running away. Like, hey, if you run away, I know you're stronger than me, you're faster than me, but if you run away, I'm gonna kill these people that you love. And it's like, shit, that's another weaponization of marriage from that perspective. And obviously, that's incredibly messed up and very extreme. It's not typical by any means, but it is something that happened. It's something I wanted to draw attention to before we continue moving past, because that's something I'm going to build on a little bit later. And I wanted to set the groundwork beforehand. But either way, you said you wanted to.
I got you.
You wanted to touch on the religious
There's
aspect.
actually one more thing.
What's up?
Yeah, before, and this is actually a tie into religious aspect as well. So when you went into that conversation about how, unfortunately, marriage was different, and you had touched a little bit about the African culture, and so I wanted to go back into that because the history of African culture, to a certain regard, I'm not necessarily well versed, so I apologize right now for any things that I say that may be incorrect. But I know in certain African cultures, the idea of marriage or being married to one person was not something that was just natural. And that didn't happen in every single culture where you were just married to one person and one person only.
Yeah.
There was cultures where you're married to multiple people.
Yep.
And so that's part of the history of marriage as well, is that marriage in our civilization right now is now like completely different, drastically different from however many hundreds of years ago, where people were married to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people. You go back to biblical days, you hear all about how kings they were married to this person and had a kid by this one, and there was like 8, 9 different wives at one time.
Kings had hoes.
I mean, not to make any comparisons, but King Solomon had hundreds of wives, my dude.
Just for anybody listening, that ain't me, no relation.
But yeah, like that's like the historical aspect of it. Like there was literally a completely different mindset about marriage, and then I think when the religion of Europe and the Catholic Church and everything came in, that's when everything really started to change, and it got into more of a religious aspect, and marriage got tied into religion.
Yeah, I feel like.
And so then you had. Yeah, go ahead.
I feel like, back probably as early as you can think about it, like even, I guess, technically pre-religion or pre-religiosity, there was a utilitarian use for what would be rudimentary marriage. I mean, obviously, a bunch of oonga boonga niggas, like, way back in the day weren't necessarily like, you know, oh, well, I made a ring out of the bone of the saber-toothed tiger. Put that on your finger. You're mine now. Like, it's more so like, hey, you and me are forming a unit because I need kids. You want to have kids. You need food. I can provide food, you know, shelter, blah, 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 down the line. And, you know, the more people you have in your tribe, the better your tribe's going to do. Just, we're social creatures, etc. Um,
Right.
but the utilitarian value for it, kind of across a lot of religious lines, like far be it from me to say that I'm any kind of theologian or anything like that. I don't just know religions by any means, but I've studied a handful of them on a hobbyistic level, so I know a decent amount. And a lot of them, what they have in common is that they do touch on an aspect of the utilitarian nature of, you know, the man and wife formula, so to speak. It ends up being that a lot of them, just to put it where most people in the West could pretty much pick it up immediately, it's that whole you know, just man and wife thing. So that do you part? Are you going to be there for sickness and in health? It's just a contract. It's literally a contract saying like, hey, we're going to stick it out long term. Because I mean, that's how it is. You got parents telling kids not to have sex before marriage because they think that that's not going to last or whatever, and stuff like that, and they think God's going to look down upon it. I mean, that's the whole gambit right there. But I feel as though that gets the utilitarian aspect of a union of that sort gets folded into religiosity in almost every aspect, even so far as like other cultures where you that are more polygamous, where you have typically multiple wives. I'm sure there are places with multiple husbands, but it's not as common. And there's something to be said about that, truth be told, but that's a different podcast. But it's essentially saying, you know, go out, be fruitful, and multiply, right? It's that aspect.
Right.
And a lot of times in those polygamous relationships, you're not looking for love with each one of those people. It's the utilitarian value that comes from being married. It's saying, hey, I can provide. Like there are, I can't remember what country it was. I believe it's several countries that go from the northwest or northeast side of Africa, those countries leading off into the Arabian Peninsula, if I'm not mistaken. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that's true. That basically say, or basically do the polygamous marriages and relationships and stuff, but it is like written down against the law that you can't have more wives than you can provide for. And if I mean it's somewhat implicit, but it's about as explicit as you're gonna get in saying, hey, you can be with whoever you want to be with, just make sure that you can provide for them. Do I agree with that? Not necessarily, no. But that's them. That's their culture. I'm not shitting on it. If it works for them, it works for them.
Man, shout out to my man Bill Gates, man. He could afford to anybody.
Did you see what happened when he got that divorce, that smooth ass divorce, and everybody on Tinder was like trying to hit up this random profile? Like, oh yeah, you know, just like it was a fake profile, obviously. Like it was so obviously fake. And the dude playing Bill Gates was like, yeah, just send me, you know, $1,000 so that way I know it's real, or whatever the fuck he said to these just absolute ignorant bitches. And they're like, all right, cool, fuck it. And that dude probably made like a nice $15K off of just pretending to be a billionaire who just went through a divorce. Like, you got girls saying they're gonna do all kinds of shit to get the bag off that dude. Good lord. But that comes a little later in this conversation. Anyway, back to it. But yeah, did you have any? My bad. Did you have anything else you wanted to say about the religious aspect of it?
So, I mean, that's pretty much what I have on the religious aspect. I mean, obviously, being a Christian myself, like you hear so much about like the biblical aspect of marriage when it comes to the union, and like you were talking about, like till death do us part, and that commitment and that spiritual connection, and it's the two shall become one mentality.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the whole thing about being a unit. It's two people working together as a unit to become one, creating a family unit, all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so that's where the religious aspect for me, I've kind of been raised in that, right? And so from all these years of this foundation of this religious aspect that's being taught, it's been taught for years and years and years. And as Black people, we were raised in the South, being the place where we were enslaved, and the South being more so of a, I guess, less liberal, more conservative area of our country. We were raised underneath those Christian, quote unquote, values.
Yeah.
And so that's all that for a long time, all we knew was marriage one to one.
For sure.
And so that's where you see a lot of, and we're not going to get into the whole, like you were talking about at the beginning with the gay, the trans, and the, we're not going to get into that conversation, but that's where you see so much of the Black community struggling with that shift in marriage, is because of how our culture was stripped away. We adopted a new culture, and now that culture is starting to shift even more.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to bring it into the current day. Then, yeah,
right.
Because like a lot of people, a lot of scholars, even doctors and stuff, have been kind of discussing what Black culture is, and I'm not going to make this a Black culture, discussion or anything, but
right.
It's worth bringing up specifically under that lens, even if only briefly, that Black culture isn't like any other culture on earth, because Black culture was developed instead of, naturally, organically formed. It wasn't a system of, hey, we've lived here, we know what this is, we know how we disseminate our history or anything like that. It was, hey, we're going to take you from everything you know, put you over here. You have to adopt what we say, but it's going to be impossible for you to do that because we're not going to give you any of the tools to do that with. Also get married. Also, to who we say. So essentially an arranged marriage and blah, blah, blah. But, it gets created, and we finally got to a point more or less now where we can say, oh yeah, we're something of a unit, not monolithic necessarily, but we're something of a racial unit, however far you want to push that in your own mind. And we have to be comfortable with the fact that we constantly are having to move around and shift and change, and that includes in our relationships and the way we view the world from a romantic perspective. And I think that's what we're going to end up talking about now, like with even with the LGBT community as far as it concerns Black people and further. But yeah, I think that's a good way to transition into the modern day and just talk about how that's changed, and then we can get into some of the issues from there.
Right. And so you have modern day marriage today. And I would say modern day marriage today is honestly built on a really shaky foundation. Because I believe a lot of it is built on emotion.
You're going to offend some people saying that, man.
Someone today. Go ahead.
You're gonna offend somebody talking like that. You better back that up.
I got you. Look, and so, look, if I offend you, I apologize. But at the same time, I'm not gonna switch up just because I hurt someone's feelings.
I mean, for sure.
Modern day marriage today has become a little bit of a fairy tale. And here's what I mean by that. So, marriage today means I'm here until you do something wrong. And in certain regards, that's fair, because doing something wrong could mean abuse. Doing something wrong could mean cheating. Doing something wrong could mean being in a really poor financial state where you do something wrong financially and you put yourself in a horrible, put yourself and your spouse, whoever that may be, in a horrible financial situation, right?
Yeah.
And that, to certain regards, like those can be seen as viable grounds for divorce. And I'm not telling anyone what reasons they should have to divorce or to not be married anymore, or to not even choose to be married. What I am saying that marriage today compared to marriage in history, and I'm not saying marriage back then was done the right way either. I'm saying the ideal marriage is built on commitment, it's built on communication, it's built on honesty, all these values that we hold in high regard. And unfortunately, a lot of those values are, how do I say this gently? Less, I'm just going to leave it right there. A lot of those values are just not very common today.
I get you. And maybe this will be the start of where we divide, where we diverge in our ideas. I'm not like completely off it or whatever. I've
Right.
over the years started to view it a slightly different way than you insofar as what you were talking about. I believe romantic relationships across the board, and even just like strictly sexual relationships that may lead into something romantic later on, those is complicated type situations,
Right.
are based on something that's not inherently appropriate. I guess that sounds stupid, but essentially I feel as though we've gotten to a point where we don't even know how to properly start relationships, let alone. You good?
Yep, I'm here. What's up?
Okay, it sounded like a truck hit you or something.
No, I'm good.
All right, no, you're good, man. But we don't know how to start relationships, like even before marriage. Fuck marriage for a second. I don't think we know how to properly look at another person and say, oh yeah, they have this, this, and this that I need. Not like, oh, I'm not lowering my standards for anybody. Raise your hand if you've heard that before. But, I'm talking specifically like, hey, I want to be in a relationship. I've been single for a while, and this shit is for the birds. Y'all niggas ain't shit. Like, let's get into one of these old relationships real quick. Cool. All that's fine. Until you don't realize that the entire time you were single, you didn't even know what you were looking for to begin with. Like you were out there doing whatever you were doing, whether you were, 100% by yourself the whole time, just, sewing up clothes or whittling wood or whatever the hell you were doing, or if you're out there, quote unquote, living your best life. But whatever the case may be, you still you have to be cognizant of yourself and know what your end goal even could be. Not even necessarily is or will be, but could be. Because me, I when I'm single, I'm not thinking like, oh man, I'm about to fuck everybody. Like my thought is like, I'm looking at relationships that have worked and relationships that don't work and trying to predict, these new relationships, what will and won't work in them, and seeing the aspects that I like and would like to see in myself even. Like, that's a huge thing people don't do anymore, which is like try to see their own flaws in other people, like displayed in other people, learning from other folks' mistakes, as it used to be called. But people don't really do that anymore. So like, I deserve the world. If you want me, you better put a ring on it. I'm the fucking greatest you ever going. What's that shit they said on Incredibles? Only black family in all of Incredibles, and they made them the most niggerish motherfuckers in the goddamn world. That shit upset me to no end.
I am the greatest good you ever gonna
I knew you fucking knew it. I fucking knew you knew it. Because every black person I know knows that line right there. Because you know, either like a white dude that's down for the cause wrote that line, or a black dude who's just absolutely had it up to here with his lady wrote that line. Because that shit was real. Like, that shit was so fucking real. But that's crazy though. You know, you're supposed to be a unit. How in the fuck are you putting yourself above me? And that's in a marriage with a. I think they had a kid or more than one kid, and at that point, I can't remember. I know that Disney is like considering making a spinoff with just Frozone and his family or whatever. And I think they have multiple kids. But regardless, that's a marriage right there. Like, take all the fantasy out of it, take all the animation out of it. That conversation happens, minus the extra shit. That actual conversation happens in real life. And that is you putting yourself above the person that's supposed to be your significant other. Like, how are you going to be more significant than your significant other? If anything, it should be 50-50, and realistically, you should see more in them than you see in yourself, and vice versa. That way you end up being more than the sum of your parts. But we don't do that anymore. Like, not even in like a girlfriend-boyfriend aspect. So how the fuck are we supposed to end up feeling good about any of this? You start off with no foundation, and then you kind of build on this shaky shit. And when it starts crumbling a little bit, you're like, oh, fuck, we need to double down. That's not how you build a house. That's not how you build anything, frankly. Like, once it starts to shake, you're supposed to tear that shit down and start over. Have a better foundation. That's how it's supposed to be. But what people are doing now is they're seeing, like, I want to see what kind of tools, what kind of equipment, what kind of resources you can bring to this lot where we're about to make this home. And I want to see how much you can build on your own, and I'll step in when necessary. And then shitty foundation, shitty resources, shitty tools. You build a shitty little house, starts to shake up a little bit, and you're like, oh man, this looks like shit. But I don't feel like fixing it. So how about we put a deck on the side of it, aka get married, and it's like a nice little patio with some furniture and shit, make it look better. Before the whole thing goes tits up and we had to get a divorce. It's like, that's dumb. You started off wrong. You can't run a race starting off on the wrong foot and expect to win. That's just not how that goes, right? But I think that's a major issue, and I know that brings us somewhat into a topic that you've wanted to discuss basically this whole week, probably longer than that, of what people bring to the table, i.e., what do you start off with in a relationship, the first date type questions and stuff like that. And we can build on just the absolute bare minimum to start a romantic relationship, and then see how that compounds upon itself and becomes a good or bad marriage.
And so we can definitely get into that. I did want to add one more thing to this modern day marriage.
Yeah.
So what you see a lot modern day marriage is that common law marriage that they used to call it back in the day, where two people are just together. And they're together for so long, at a certain point, they're just married-ish, married adjacent, whatever you want to call that. But then you still get marriages today that are based out of, we had a baby.
True.
So the logical next step for them is, might as well get married. I mean, I have friends, and I'm not going to call any names out, but like, I have people that I know.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about you, Tom.
Unfortunately, like, what'd you say?
We're not going to talk about you, Tom, with your bitch ass and your stupid fucking kid.
No. But like, that's a lot of what happens today is that, and that obviously depends on your family background. Some people just keep moving, but you get people that, they had a kid, and so they either move in with their girlfriend, they move in with their boyfriend, which is obviously a responsible decision to make. Obviously, take care of each other, take care of the child.
Can be, for sure.
But you end up, people getting married out of responsibility. Well, responsibility was not one of those foundational things. That's not how marriage works.
Yeah.
You get married out of responsibility. There's gonna be a lot of regret. There's gonna be a lot of like hard feelings about, well, dang it, I didn't want to marry this dude. He's really kind of a jerk, but now we got a kid.
Yeah, it's
I
like
don't want my kid to be,
it's marriage out of obligation, right?
you know, right. And once you start doing stuff out of obligation, it's no longer out of love. And love, as crazy as it sounds, even though we consider it an emotion, that is a key piece to holding everything together.
True.
And like just to say, like there's people that are still married 60 years. Shout out to my grandparents. But like they're still married, and I can say like it's out of love. Like they built a life where it's family, it's all this other stuff now, and yeah, it does kind of sound like an obligation, like you're obligated to this person now, but at the same time, it's really more so love than it is obligation. And so modern day marriage compared to modern day marriage, I'm talking about like right now in 2020 versus 1980, where people were getting married for 30, 40 plus years. There's a lot of stuff that has switched in 40 years that did not switch 200 years ago.
Yeah.
And so modern day marriage has really shifted so much to the point where now we can't even agree about what roles people play in a marriage, and even previous to marriage. Then this is where I'm going to transition this real quick, is like previous to marriage, we can't even agree on how to get to that point.
Yeah.
And that's where this whole thing was kind of inspired from, was this conversation from a different podcast about what do you bring to the table. And you, in the podcast that I was watching, you see these guys and these women having this major disagreement because the guys asked the women, what do you bring to the table? And that seemed to be like a major point of conflict, which is confusing for me because I believe women ask the same thing in a different format.
I mean, definitely.
They ask us, hey, do you have a job? Hey, do you have your own house? Hey, do you have your own car? Hey, does your beard connect? What? like, no, like legitimately, like that's a whole thing. Like,
no, I mean, I know you're right.
Connect.
I know you're right. I
like,
know you're right.
Are you over 6 feet? What?
Oh, Jesus.
Like, I have not heard a man talk about marriage. Now, he's talked about dating and how fine my girl has to look like this or my girl has to look like that. I've talked about, but come to marrying a woman, for me and I guess the people that I'm around, I've never heard a man's qualifications for marriage be, her boobs have to look like this.
Could you imagine two dudes are talking to each other and they're like, hey man, what do you look for in a woman? And dude number 2 comes up, he's like, man, that bitch's beard has got to connect. Like,
like this is like a stupid comparison, but like imagine we said like, oh, her boobs can't sag more than 3 inches.
Right?
What? She has no control over that.
How's she gonna feed my kids? No, I'm playing.
Like it's those kind of stupid things that come out of people's mouths, and I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. We can't get into a relationship and communicate with each other because of facial hair.
You know the dumbest thing I've ever heard a dude say that he couldn't get past on a woman? And this is true. Like, this is what I'm about to say is absolutely true. It's not like, oh, she can't have hairy legs or blah, 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 blah. And I've heard that before, but to a degree, I understand why. I don't agree with it at all, but I understand that dumb, like, I've never lived with a woman before part of your brain. You get past that. That's just an immature thought. This is a dude who had children with this woman. This is his wife. And we just happened to be working together. He was like, man, it's a black guy, right? He's like, man, I couldn't date a woman with dreadlocks. And I was like, why the fuck not?
Wait a minute.
It's like, what?
Dreadlocks?
Fucking
One of the
dreadlocks.
most common forms of...
Yeah, nigga. I was like, wait. So, like, what if she was like bald, right? He's like, they make wigs. I was like, okay, so you rather have a lady with fake hair than real hair that can possibly go like down to her ass, right? One of the strongest, like physically strongest hairstyles you can have. One of the most versatile, natural hairstyles a black woman or a woman with, you know, that texture of hair can have. And you rather her, like, in this dichotomy, in this one or the other scenario, you rather have her be bald, like chrome dome Michael Jordan in his prime, bald, than have just regular dreads. Like, what the fuck? That doesn't make any goddamn sense, dude. That doesn't make any sense to me, especially with sister dreads. And shout out to the sisters with the sister dreads. My aunt, one of my aunts had those at one point, and they look good. Like, you can't even tell it's not like permed hair from a distance, and you get up close on it, you see the texture of it. That shit's amazing. But that's not the point right now. The point is, like, that's dumb, and he's dumb for thinking that. I feel bad for his wife. I'm not even sure if they're together anymore. I haven't seen that dude in years. I hope he either changed his mind. That's what I actually hope, because they were married. Or, you know, she found somebody who doesn't give that much of a shit about something so goddamn trivial. But, you know, there are dumb people everywhere. Men, women, other, everywhere, right? I, for one, can't put myself in a situation mentally where I commit to being so obtuse, you know, about just the absolute minutia of another person. Like, oh man, that bitch's earlobes don't connect to the side of her face. I'm not for it. Like, it's like, bro, who cares? Does she love you? Does she love you? Like, be real. Does she? I mean, first date, you're not gonna know. Second date, still probably more than likely 99% of the time, you're not gonna know. Third date, you might be seeing like, oh, okay, you know, I'm getting closer to this person. Fourth date, yeah, we're getting somewhere. Fifth, sixth, you know, 10th date down the line, you can know, even if you don't say it yet, even if y'all aren't comfortable on that level yet. And I'm not saying you should or shouldn't be, just, you know, to each their own. But by the 10th date, you're probably not counting by that point. You should know whether or not this is going to be somebody that's down for you, and if you're down for that person. And you're never going to get there if you're not asking questions, right? And I mean, like, real fucking questions about how you live your life on a day-to-day. Like, do you have a job? Like, not bullshit like, does your fucking beard connect? Like, and I think that gets into something a lot of, and I hate to say it because it's, there are two wolves that live inside of everyone, and no, I'm fucking around. It's these two ideas that conflict in my head, and it's like, I do agree with men's rights activists. They need a different name. That we should be advocating for men's rights, but a lot of MRAs, as they're called in short, are buttholes, right? Same thing with incels. But one thing they got right, to a degree, nobody jump up my ass and down my throat or whatever. One thing they got right is that people that are considered to be, you know, higher in sexual value, whatever that means to whatever society that is, and a lot of times in the Western world, that's women, are hypergamous, you know? They get to do the choosing. And if they choose you, that doesn't necessarily mean they're not going to drop you and choose somebody else. And they've shown that. It's in music now. It's very, like, commonly said. Cardi B was a stripper who used to have sex with some of her clientele, and she would drug them and take their money and move on to somebody else. And she said that shit publicly. No, I'm not getting off that point. I'll bring it up every goddamn show if I want. Like, it, that shit is wild to me. Like that just happened. Not only did it happen, she admitted to it, and we're like, yeah, but that song slaps though. Like, no, dude. Like, what does a Cardi B bring to the table? And I can already hear the voices way off in the background. She got money. She got her own money. And it's like, yeah, and she's still talking about fucking dudes for money in her songs. So what the fuck did she bring into the table? Like that ass she got from Dr. Schultz, right? Them fake titties, the push-up bra from Victoria's Secret and shit. Like, have you seen her without makeup on? I'm not saying she's ugly without it. Frankly, I prefer it. That's just me personally. But that's not what she looks like. Also, she's got kind of an annoying voice. I hate to say that, but yeah, it is what it is.
I mean, but like you're talking about something real right there. It's like, what do you bring to the table? And I think it's different. It's a conversation that we need to have, because what you bring to the table to a man, what a woman brings to the table that supports a man is different from what a man brings to the table that supports a woman. Having a job, I don't care about if you have a job as a woman. I don't care. I'm happy that you have a career. You're a functioning human being. I am very happy for you.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yep.
Right? That's not what I'm looking for when I say, okay, you have a house, you have your own home. Congratulations. You are a functioning human being who keeps a roof over your head. I do not care that you brought that to the table. It's a great benefit, but I don't care about it. As a man, and I'm going to speak for me, not for anyone else. I care about, are you supportive?
True.
Because as men, I'm called to go out into this world and create and protect and do all this other type of stuff to bring home resources.
Yep.
And that's part of my innate nature, is to go out and do stuff like that. And so, are you able to be supportive in that role? If you can do that, great. That is one thing that we can build on. Because you can't have two people leading at the same time.
True.
Like, that's where you get into struggle, these power struggles. You get two people trying to lead at the same time. Someone has to lead, someone has to support. Someone has to support, someone has to lead. I am more than capable of doing both roles.
Yeah.
But naturally, I'm just the leader. It's who I am. And that's okay if you are as well. But understand that when you come to a table with a man who is also a leader, somebody's going to have to step down. And to some men's fault, we have pride. And some men are not able to overcome their pride and step back and be supportive.
Very true.
And so that we do have issues like that, where we bring our pride to the table. Unfortunately, we're not supposed to do that. We bring our pride to the table, and that ends up causing issues. But at the same time, women have their pride as well. And they've gotten to a point where I've spent this many years in school. I'm going to be a doctor. I'm going to do this. I'm going to be that. And we're like, okay, that's great. I'm very, very happy for you. But I also want someone to spend time with. So if you're working 70, 80-hour weeks, you're not home. And we can't spend time together. So this isn't going to work. So are you going to be able to support our relationship and still have your career? Now, that plays into a different dynamic in relationships as well. Like, who's going to be the quote-unquote breadwinner and who's going to be the supportive person, right?
Yeah.
So that's part of the reason where I've tried to find a balance in my own life, is I can find a way to be a breadwinner and be supportive at the same time. But that's really the conversation of, like, what do you bring to the table, is that men and women look for two different things. Women look for that guy who can provide. Women look for that guy who can be the protector. Women look for those things. Women look for the 6-foot guy, as they continually put in their dating profiles. Women look for this type of stuff. You gotta have your own house. You gotta have your own car. You gotta have your own this. Y'all look for that, and you publicly state it. After a certain point, we no longer, I'm not saying we no longer care. It's not that we no longer care. We do care about how your body looks at a certain point. Now, at a certain point, we obviously know that age and, gravity happens.
Yeah.
You can read into that however you want to read into that. And so we know things are going to change. Like, you can read into that however you want to read into that, and we know things change.
Yeah, for sure.
So, at the end of the day, yes, your body is, it's cool to bring that to the table, but that's not a priority or something I can build on, because that's not going to last.
Yeah.
So women, I think they're very confused about what they need to bring to the table right now.
I guess I'll kind of piggyback off of that a little bit. I find it really weird, and maybe it's because of internet culture or, the fact that you can talk to somebody on the other side of the world in like an instant, and that's something that the human mind, we can understand, but we can't really conceptualize. The same reason why you get little kids in like Xbox Live lobbies calling each other the N-word and not having any idea where it comes from or why they probably shouldn't do that. But like, you get ladies talking about, oh, I want you to have this, you need to do that, I want you to be this, you gotta be this tall, you gotta have this facial hair, this type of, hairstyle, I want you to, wear this kind of stuff, to have this kind of car, live in this kind of home over on this part of town, and blah, blah, blah. Like, apparently the new thing where I'm at is that people specifically want blue-collar men. I'm like, when the fuck did that happen? Like, I mean, I understand country motherfuckers think that blue-collar life is, like, the tits, but it's a job. Play it. Like, you're not going to have a dude making enough money to lift his truck if all he's doing is, shoveling pig shit. But, like, a lot of these people, like you said, are asking, what do you bring to the table without actually saying it? And frankly, I think it's better to have it as an open-ended question, especially on a first date, because that lets you know where their mind is at, the way they answer it. If somebody asks me what I bring to the table, first things I'm thinking off the top of my head, like, hey, I'm fun to be around, I'm very caring, I'm empathetic, I have my shit together, I cook for myself, I clean for myself, I got my own place, I got my own vehicles and stuff, so you don't have to worry about any of that shit, unless all of that goes to crap all at once, in which case it'll be very dramatic and you will be the first one to know about it. But, like, it's what I would say, but I've asked that of people, not in those words, but I've asked, like, hey, what do you have going on? And they're like, oh, well, I just finished, the third season of Criminal Minds. It's like, that was on your mind tough, wasn't it? Like, that was, like, big for you. Like, why the fuck would you say that? I'm not even gonna sugarcoat it. Why the fuck would you say that to me out loud? Like that was a thing to say. That was dumb and a waste. That was a waste of my time and yours. I'll see you later. Probably not though. Like that's really silly. You get to see where people's minds are at. Because guys don't get to ask for that shit. Not unless you're rich and or handsome. Those are your options. Like Leonardo DiCaprio fucks people that are under the age of 25. He has been very open about that. I already clowned on Cardi B. Let me take it back to the men real quick. Like Leonardo DiCaprio fucks women that are explicitly 25 and under. I don't recall how old he is now, but I know he is nowhere near 25. And he's been doing that since he was like 18. So, everybody he's been with, like, as a romantic partner, romantic, not just fucking, but romantic too, has been 25 and under, and he breaks up with them on like their 25th or 26th birthday or something. Feel free to look it up and fact check me on that. I've seen it multiple times now. And nobody gives that dude shit because there's like this implied knowledge like, oh yeah, he's rich and famous. He can just do that. It's like, okay, Do y'all not see how the average man treats the average woman like they're rich and famous, but the average woman treats the average man like that woman is rich and famous? Like, does that make sense?
No, no, it definitely does, because like you see that a lot where, okay, women get to pick, right? They're the pickers.
Yep.
However, like crappy it is in our world, or how it works is you see it on the dating apps. Women get to pick. You see it on Tinder. You don't just like someone and then like, oh, they're matched. No, it's women are the pickers. They have to match with you.
Yep.
Like women pick who they want. Men get who they can. Right.
Pretty much.
So, I mean, unfortunately, that's how the world works. It is what it is. You kind of just live. You learn to live with it as a man.
Yeah.
And that's okay. And so now you kind of get to the point where the average woman is shooting for men above her, I guess I would say her class level to a certain degree.
I was trying to find a better word for it, but I couldn't think of one.
I couldn't think of a better word, but it is what it is. Basically, you're a 6 and you're shooting for an 8 or a 9.
Yeah. Like, you're trying to date up instead of, dating on par.
And so, but the crazy thing is, right, you see women when they get married, they finally figure that out, and then they start trying to tell people, oh, yeah, it doesn't matter for all that other stuff. After they get married. That's when they figure it out, right?
Yep.
Now, while they're dating, they're like, oh, yeah, let me shoot for this guy. He's got muscles and all this other stuff, right? And I'm like, okay, that's cool. But, hear me out. You could get with a guy who is, like, got a stable career, is going to provide for you financially, is going to make sure that you have everything that you need. He's going to be supportive. He's going to be a great family guy, right?
Yeah.
And that's unfortunately where the average guy, like you were saying, has to treat the average woman like she's a 9.
You're supposed to. Like, you get with your woman's your queen, right?
And that's what I'm saying. And that's okay to treat her that way.
Absolutely.
And but only in the context of, hey, that's my wife. Not, hey, we're just dating and we're just having a conversation on Tinder and, oh, you need to treat me like I'm a queen. No, you're a 6.
Like, bitch,
you're
I don't know you.
I don't know you. What you mean?
I'm just walking down the street treating every single woman I see like a queen.
Like, I'm not going to send you money because you have your Cash App in your freaking Tinder profile. What do you mean?
That shit
Get out of my face.
That shit is so goddamn heinous. I swear to God. Dude. That struck a nerve with me. My bad. Let me regroup.
You're good. But we can get back on the topic of marriage. Just like all this dating stuff leads up to that question about what you bring to the table. It leads up to marriage.
Yeah.
And it really goes into like, okay, what are we bringing that is compatible to the table? I'm bringing a stable career that makes X amount of money. Are you able to up that or support that, or how can we make this work? And that's just one of the benefits, is that you're able to bring your financial, like each other's financial resources to the table and say, hey, let's buy a house. Hey, let's buy a property. Hey, let's start a business. Hey, let's do all this based on your individual resources.
Yeah.
And so that's a benefit that I can talk about as we kind of transition here as well.
Real quick.
What are some benefits? Yeah, go ahead.
Before we move on from it, I got a real quick story just to demonstrate essentially what we've been talking about this whole time. There is somebody that I know. That's as much as I'm willing to say. And I went to their wedding, and I knew her, but I didn't know the guy she was getting married to. And I know her fairly well, right? And so they're going through it. The pastor's like, hey, do you guys have your vows ready, and blah blah blah. And the guy had written out this this long fucking thing. And he's like, oh, this is my queen. I knew since I met you, blah, 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 and all that shit. And then she did, like, a standard one. I'm not mad about it. It's a little off, but, whatever. And dude comes over to, kind of breaking up the tension a little bit. The preacher comes over to him and is like, well, what do you call her, to the groom? And he's like, oh yeah, this is my queen. I worship the ground she walks on. And everybody's like, oh. And this shit, I have nightmares about shit like this. This dude goes into the wife, to the bride, whatever. What do you call him? What is your pet name for him? And she's like, oh, I call him, and then calls him by his name. And everybody just kind of like gets dead quiet. It's like, I was like, yo, this is fucking bad. Like,
let's call him Steve.
Yeah, right? It's like, yeah, that's my homie Steve. We just smooch sometimes. Like, keep in mind, this lady is like in her 50s, right? Like, hasn't been married ever. And she is finally at that point. Like, 50 years, decades leading up to this. And she has this man right in front of her that she is about to commit the rest of her life to. And he calls her queen in front of all these people. Like, I worship the ground she walks on. I love this woman. And what do you call the groom? I call that nigga Steve. Because that's my nigga Steve. Like,
what?
And I'm like, yo, that is the wildest shit. Like, it got so fucking quiet. I had to stifle my laughter, dude. I was fucking dumbfounded when I heard that shit. And I know them fairly, or I know her fairly well. I'm getting to know him now. But I was like, I've been watching it ever since that point. Because I'm like, how do y'all treat each other? Because I feel like even if he hated the shit out of you, he's still going to make an effort. I don't see you making an effort, though. And I think that's kind of a part of it, too. Like, a lot of, and I'll use that as my transition into the next phase of this conversation. I feel like a lot of people think marriage is the end goal and not like a milestone in the journey, if that makes sense.
You are absolutely right.
Like, a lot of people think like, oh, I'm about to fucking, bust the pussy wide open on this dude, put that on the gram, let people know we together, put up with his tomfoolery for a minute, get a little bit of money off his ass and make sure he's good for it, make him wife me up, and that's a wrap. Like, that's not how that works. That's not how that works at all, fam. Like, no relationship, I'll go as far as to say that, no relationship should go like what I just described. And I know somebody out there is going to be like, oh, that's how me and my husband met each other. And I say, meet me in 10 years. And if that's still true, I'll give you $1. But like, I cannot believe in the day and age we're in right now, people actually think marriage is the end goal. Especially, and I'm not saying this is like a bad thing or a good thing. I'm just saying it is a thing. You have a kid out of wedlock. I don't give a shit. I don't think it matters. Not to this degree, at least. But, a lot of times back in the day, it used to be get married, have your kid. And that would be like, oh, the marriage isn't working. Throw another kid on it, And that would be the thing that kept you together because you have an outside force demanding both of you guys' attention. But we have way better tools now. We have, different family styles now. That's a shout out to the LGBT community. There you go. That's your one. And it feels like, you're making a life to retcon and rectify your mistake. But then that life has to deal with the fact that they are like, the slapdash glue to keep that family together. That is an incredible amount of weight to put on a 4-year-old,
Exactly.
Like, that is fucking crazy and truly should never be like that, in my opinion. I'm nobody, but I know it. I know my psyche when I was 4 years old, what little psyche I did have. And if my parents had sat me down, like genuinely, like they're about to tell me Santa Claus doesn't exist or whatever. And they sit me down on the couch and they're like, hey, we need you, because if you weren't here, we're not gonna be together. All that marriage shit, all that love shit you always hear about on Lifetime and stuff, all that's fake. If you weren't here, I would have been like way off in Wyoming. I don't even fuck with that state, you know? Like we this would be a wrap, dude. I'd be fucking all up and down the fucking street just having wild ass sex with anybody who wants it. And I don't know what your mom would be doing, but probably bacon. But like this would be done. This would be over, right? And like I'm 4 years old, just trying to put together what my dad just said about their relationship hinging on me, and then I'd throw up and die, like, and that would just be the end of it. That'd be the end of me and the end of their relationship, because I'm that glue in this hypothetical. That is a horrible thing we do to people. Like, why? Or I say to people, to children, literal children. As much as we talk about we want to save the children, again, different podcast, but like, we put so much emphasis on these milestones and almost none on the journey. And that is a crazy miscalculation, in my opinion. I could talk on that for a little while longer, but I'm going to bogart the entire mic. So you go ahead and say your piece, man.
No, you're all good, but just jumping into the benefits, and we can kind of throw in some of our personal opinions on this piece as well. So obviously you get the benefit of having someone to satisfy whatever needs you have, whatever sexual needs you have, and you don't have to worry about you should not have to worry about the possibility for disease or whatever else comes with the sexual journeys of a single person.
Yeah.
So there's the quote-unquote benefit. You get the financial benefit of, two people working, or one person being able to support whatever's going on in the house, take care of like responsibilities in the house, and one person being able to go out and work and make X amount of dollars. And so you get that benefit there. There's plenty of benefits, being able to have some emotional support at home, or having someone there to just be able to talk to, or have some company, or spend time with, or enjoy hobbies together, or travel together, do whatever people enjoy to do, right?
Yeah.
But then there's also those drawbacks, right? There's that big D word, that's that big divorce.
Yeah.
That's looming in the back of people's minds a lot of times. It's like, well, if I mess up, is he, she, whatever, are they going to divorce me? Because I made a mistake. And it could be a small mistake and someone just blows up over it. Or it could be a huge mistake and maybe it's called for a divorce to actually happen.
Yeah.
And so that's one of obviously the hugest drawback to marriage is that topic of divorce, because you see Bill Gates, you see Jeff Bezos, you see all these guys where divorce just is an option.
True. Very true.
And you got to be careful about who you marry.
And I feel like that brings me to the point where we like truly start to differ, and that's the benefits and disbenefits of truly being married, matrimony specifically. Like, I am, for all intents and purposes, monogamous. Suffice it to say, I could see myself working in a polygamous situation, but it would have to be so specific as to like almost render itself moot. Like, I don't think that the situation I could work in polygamy under would exist without an incredible amount of work just to try to find people to make that work. So I'd rather just be monogamous, frankly. But I don't see myself personally getting married ever. I don't necessarily disagree with marriage as it stands. My issue comes down to not really appreciating the way that marriages have gone. I mean, just the stats that everybody knows, over 50% of marriages end in divorce. And I feel like that's due to some shit I said earlier, where we don't really start with a good foundation. We can't even ask leading questions on, or not leading, that's an inappropriate term. We can't ask questions that lead us to, a better knowledge of the person we're going on a date with. Because you have to talk about, like, oh yeah, I got a car, I got a house, I got this, I got that. It's like, what are you going to do? You can have everything in the world and still get Bill Gates out of a fucking relationship, right? Like, if he can't make it with everything he brought to the table, I don't have a breath, Like, that's just point blank, period. So fuck all the nonsense. Who are you? What do you bring to the table? Now, with that in mind, I feel as though marriage isn't explicitly necessary on my end of things. I know people still want to do it, and I don't deny them that. I think that's perfectly fine. If you want to get married, get married. I'm not here to downplay the emotions people have towards it, because it's perfectly reasonable and hugely traditional. I'm saying I don't feel like I want the government in a relationship that I'm in. I don't feel like it's necessary for, the fact that you get a tax break just for getting married, just so you can have the government in your shit like that, that doesn't really do anything for me. I'm not really trying to have kids, so I don't really need marriage for that. I'd rather just date one person really long term. And that way, if we do ever, for whatever reason, fall out of love with one another or end up wanting different things, decades down the line to minutes down the line even, it's not a whole ordeal. It's just like, hey, I really don't want to do this anymore. I'm sorry. And if we actually love each other and truly cared about each other the whole time, actually, I feel like it would be perfectly reasonable not only to say that, but also to accept that from the other party. Because, like, a divorce is an ugly fucking thing. Anybody who's gone through it knows it. Even some of the lighter divorces don't come off light, Like, somebody's still getting fucked over.
It's a heavy thing.
Yeah. But, a breakup will suck, but breakup ain't got shit on a fucking divorce. I don't care what you say. Like, there are very few breakups. And there are some, but we're not getting into the weeds on any listener's problematic, relationship that ended up in some crazy fucking breakup and a high-speed chase down, 66 or something. No one cares. Sorry, but no one cares. That's not typical, and that would make a great podcast that you can make on your own time. But I'm saying the vast majority of Western relationships that aren't, marriage, you break up. Okay. Then you find somebody else, or you stay alone and figure out what you need and how to better, look for people. I think that's something people kind of don't look at either. And that's a huge problem. There are plenty of people out here that think that they know exactly what they want, and by the time they get to the point where they're dating, they still have no clue. And that's really fucking not good. Like, if you get into a relationship not knowing what you want, and then, like, the more things get, separated and more disparate between your wants and needs and what you're actually receiving, you end up being married to somebody and they don't even know who they're married to. And then you're upset, man and woman, whoever. You get upset down the road because you just kind of push your own needs down to support someone else, when it should be, yeah, there's going to be some compromise, but you should be trying to find somebody where the amount of compromise necessary is minimal. It's like, hey, I like sleeping on the left side of the bed. Oh, well, I like sleeping on the left side of the bed. Fuck it, I'll sleep on the right side. All right, cool. That's not a problem. But if you're like, hey, I want 6 kids, and it's like, yeah, my womb doesn't work. It's like, yeah, that's kind of big. That's major. So I feel like I don't think that marriage is entirely necessary. And even now, I think it's disincentivized enough to where it doesn't make sense for anybody to get married, truth be told. I hate to say it like that. That's me personally thinking about it. It doesn't make any sense to me to get married in that way because so many people don't know what they want, who they are, how they're going to be in the next year, where they're going to be in the next year, where they want to be, like physically, geographically speaking. Like they don't know anything about themselves and they're only getting in a relationship, let alone married, so they have somebody to push them further on or to carry them further when truth be told, if you know yourself, and nobody knows himself 100%, but let's say you're at a B average. If you know yourself 80%, right? And then you're with somebody who knows themselves 80%. You become better than the sum of your parts. And that's why I believe personally in monogamy. And I don't think that that necessarily is inherently leading to marriage. Because, I mean, it can, but I don't think it's a necessity. I feel as though if you are better, if you know who you are and they know who they are and you guys decide to completely commit to one another, then you can be better than the sum of your parts. That's 80 plus 80. That's 160%. That was some quick math. But that's 160%. That's way better than 100%. You were never going to be 100% on your own, ever. You'll get to, 99.9%, blah, blah, blah. Like, but you're never going to be 100% on your own. Like, even if you're perfectly fine being on your own in your heart of hearts. Like, you're always going to be seeking that next adventure, that new thing, something else to do. You'll never be 100%. But there is that feeling, and I know anybody who's ever been, like, truly in love with somebody and on the same page, just properly in sync with somebody, there's that point, like an effervescence you get in your mind almost. And this is going to get a little whimsical, just follow me. There's like an effervescence you get in your mind when you're with that one person who gets you on that level and everything's so streamlined and there's so much flow to it and you don't even have to think about it. It just, everything clicks into place. And that's that shit right there. That's how you know. That's how you know you're with the person, even if not forever. That's the person you needed to be with at that moment. Like that one feeling. You can't, I imagine there's no way to even like recreate that feeling in your mind. Like I've had it I've had it in a dream once and it was really intense. But even then it was with somebody I had dated before. And it wasn't even necessarily a romantic dream. It wasn't sexual at all. It was that click. There was that thing there. And
it's definitely that click.
Yeah. And I feel as though I think people are looking for that and they don't know how to. They're not in the right mindset. Their heart's not in the right place. They're physically not in the right place, financially not in the right place. Like, oh, I need money, then I'll be happy. Nobody's happy with money. Look at Elon Musk. Look him in his dead eyes and tell me Elon Musk is happy.
Oh my goodness.
Like, no.
But I mean, you're definitely right though. I mean, and forgive me if you hear any background noise. I had to step outside my house for a minute so I wouldn't get interrupted. But just that click thing that you talked about, like I've experienced that, and I would say maybe twice.
Yeah.
Where it's that natural friendship that doesn't just like, it's not something that's like it just happens. And that's what people are looking for. That's what people are searching for. And I think you have what you can correct me if I'm wrong in this, what you're looking for is the idealistic version of marriage without the actual government involvement.
Yeah. Because if I'm, like you said earlier, you wouldn't treat your girlfriend like a queen, but then you like clarified. I was about to stop you for a second, but you clarified and you were like, if you're just dating somebody on Tinder, it's like, yeah, of course not. It's just somebody on Tinder. But like I've called girlfriends of mine before, and not all of them, obviously, but I've called girlfriends of mine wifey, shit like that. I've bought rings for girlfriends that I've been with before. Some of them I shouldn't have, and I'm glad I found that out before I actually properly, got married. But that also contributed to me not wanting to do that in general, because then I figured out, I was like, oh, I didn't know myself well enough. I definitely wasn't in a right place of mind Neither was she at the time, but she wouldn't admit it. To have done that, so it ends up coming down to like what do you need? What do you want? Do they provide that? And what can you provide them? And is it necessary to get married to get any of that? Because I'll do the
And so,
ceremony. What's up?
no, and well, you said you were gonna do the ceremony. You'll do all that, but just the physical, like the paperwork, the paperwork of everything is what you're trying to avoid.
I mean, at the moment, yeah, because I don't see a benefit to it. Like I'll do a wedding. I don't believe in marriage, but I'll do a wedding. Like, hey, I've been with this girl, and I want everybody in this room to know it. We're gonna go to Cancun on a honeymoon, and I'm gonna have sex with this lady. Look at her right now, because when she comes back, she's gonna be at 1.7 ounces heavier. And that's gonna be me, baby. Like, that's fucking disgusting. Gross.
I think where we differ, and this is just for me, I don't look at it from the legal aspect of marriage. For me, it's the spiritual aspect.
For sure.
And it's that spiritual connection. It is not even about like the legal part of it. When I get married, and I take marriage a lot more seriously than I would say some people do. For me, I'm not getting married once.
Yeah.
I mean, and I say that now, but I mean, things happen where, this is a life, and a life can end.
Yeah.
And there's no telling that maybe 25 years from now, I decide, like, maybe my partner has passed away and I find someone else.
Yeah.
That I really care about. And maybe it's just a different type of relationship at that point.
Yeah.
And that could happen. But I see myself getting married to one person only, and I'm trying to avoid that divorce piece of it. And when I say avoid divorce piece, I'm not like, I need to make sure I'm doing everything perfectly. I'm trying to select the right partner.
Absolutely.
And that's where, for me, that's how you avoid the divorce part of it, is finding that right partner who has all of the values and is ready to build on the foundation. Because even like in past relationships where I've been like, I can see potential in this person for someone that I might be willing to get married to. At the same time, I think we all know deep down right away whether or not this person is the right one. Like, we know deep down, but sometimes we're trying to change that person into, or we say, well, they have the potential so they could grow into. Well, there's a certain point where you either know or you don't know.
Yeah.
If you don't know at that moment in time, you need to just stop, pause, and really figure it out before you move to month 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 with this person.
Yeah, because then you're just working up the heartbreak.
Exactly. So now you're just building up time with this person, and it's going to get worse. Mm-hmm. The breakup is going to get worse. And so for me, it's a spiritual aspect for marriage. And that's where it comes into like, okay, there's obviously the separation of church and state, but for marriage, it seems like there is no more separation. They're both working together to get to this one thing. And for me, I would prefer that the government was not involved.
Yeah.
Like, I would prefer that. I could say, hey, this is my wife. We got married at this church. This pastor was there. I don't need the government to tell me that I'm married. Now, I want kids. It's different from you.
Yeah.
And so there may be some benefit to getting married for me that is different than you. But at the same time, I mean, my views on why I'm getting married are based in tradition to a certain degree. They're based on the ideal values, and honestly, it's really based on the fact that I think for my family, I want to build that next generation that does it the right way.
Fair enough, yeah.
And that's really what it is for me, is like I've seen I have 4 aunts, well, there's five. My grandmother has 5 children right now.
Yeah.
So out of the 5 children my grandmother had, one got married. It's just my uncle, and he didn't get married till he was 56, 50, whatever he was, 55, or however, whatever age he got married at. But he was in his 50s.
Yeah.
And he waited that long to get married. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. But he was one of the ones who told me when I was younger, he was like, yeah, man, you know how the old heads say, they'd be like, don't get married. Don't get married until you at least in your 40s, at least in your 30s. So the old heads say because they have that skewed view on marriage because of the issues, the drawbacks.
Yep.
And yes, those drawbacks for a man are vastly more significant. Vastly more significant.
You know you're going to have to elaborate for the fans, right?
Oh, well, I mean, like, for men, and I mean, for those who don't know, we end up coming out of pocket.
Yeah.
Coming out of pocket. Like, 50%. To the point where we can barely support ourselves coming out of pocket.
And 50% before the kids.
Like, imagine this, right? Jeff Bezos' wife went from average paid, like, obviously before they got married.
Yep.
So now she is one of the richest women in human history.
True. Off a divorce. She put in an hour of work and made $8 billion.
Like, Dr. Dre's wife went from
God damn.
like I'm just putting this out there because it's there. It's just like went from okay, she was just there and she was along for the ride. And yeah, she had her own little lawyer. She was a lawyer and she was all these different things. And she was there and she had all these kids. I was like, okay, so let me get this straight. For years, he was cheating on you, as you claim.
Mm-hmm.
And throughout his lifestyle, I'm not sure what he did and what he didn't do is he was growing up and being rich and famous, right?
Mm-hmm.
But for years, he was cheating. Then you see him become a billionaire. You waited until it was financially beneficial for you and then wanted to ask him for $2 million or however much money it was a month.
Did you see the breakdown of that shit?
Yes, I saw the breakdown of
Oh my fucking God, dude. Like the fact that she had the audacity to ask for like $200,000 per month for donations on her behalf.
Yes.
I almost did a fucking flip, nigga. Like I was so fucking I didn't have the words. Like I was at a loss.
But yeah, like that's one of the drawbacks that scares a lot of men off is that at any moment in time, if I do well in life, and this is especially for me with my plans for my future and everything, if I do well in life and you get upset over something that happened, or you even have a thought that says, oh, I feel like you did this, or I feel like you're not paying enough attention to me, or I feel like this. Instead of communicating, you can be like, I want a divorce.
Yeah.
And there's, we can fight that, I guess, but like that's like
not really. Though.
But I'm saying like you can get a lawyer, but like that's a mess.
Yeah.
Now you have kids, and you're having to go through lawyers because someone felt like you weren't treating them the right way. Like how? And we have a fan. I'm not sure what that means, but
shout out to you, dude. Something. Thank you for showing up. Appreciate it.
Whoever the fan is, but like that's what's crazy about marriage is that that's where a lot of our struggle is as men, is in areas like that. Now, for women, there's obviously struggles as well. You're having to give up a lot of your independence to a certain degree when it comes to having children. Like it's the struggle for childcare, it's the struggle for not having the career that you wanted, or having to take a break in the middle of your career.
Yeah.
And that's a major drawback for women. But at the end of the day, that's where it comes to what do you bring to the table, and you have to have the same goals.
Real quick.
You have to have the same goals. Go ahead.
I wanna loop this back around because we've been going a little over an hour now. It's not too bad, but I want to loop it back around. We started off talking about the history of everything, right? And I wanted to make a brief comparison, specifically to like mid '90s, and we're gonna take race out of it for a minute because if we get into the mid '90s, as far as race is concerned, it's gonna go way off the tracks. But specifically, just like the average quote unquote household, white picket fence, blah blah blah. Back in the day, there's even a Family Guy joke about it. The woman stayed in the house, and if something went wrong, the woman got beat. I don't agree with that for obvious reasons. I think that's fucked up. And I think the vast majority of people in America think that's fucked up. Is that fair to say? Like, I would say so.
No.
Now, nowadays, a comparison nowadays, something goes wrong, the woman can beat up the man, but it's less physically, and sometimes it is physically. Don't get me wrong, because I've been attacked physically before for nothing from multiple women. So let's not get on that. But like more substantially, it comes out financially. So back in the day, it used to be perfectly legal. It's literally what we had alcohol prohibition for, because men were beating the shit out of women, and I think it was first wave feminism that ended up saying, "Hey, we need to cut the shit on the fucking alcohol because these niggas are abusive." And I assumed that didn't help anything, and things got worse. And then they were like, "That was stupid. This is why y'all can't vote." And they brought back alcohol. I don't agree with that necessarily either. I mean, alcohol's fine. I'm saying women not being able to vote. Vote. Everybody fucking vote. Anyway, like the issue is there was a point where men were kind of like it was imbalanced. I'll say it like that. There was a point where it was incredibly imbalanced in the favor of men as far as a marriage was concerned. A man can go out, get a car, drive around, do whatever the fuck he wants to do. He has to have a job. He has to do this, has to do that, blah, 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 across the board, right? But a woman had to stay in the house. She has her little friends that she can talk to in the neighborhood. You have to give me children, and then you have to take care of my children and me. You have to make sure this house is spick and span. I'm gone for 8 hours plus every day. That means you got 8 hours plus every day to fix me dinner and make this bitch look as clean as when I stepped out of here this morning, right? And do I agree with that? If that's the life you want to live, then fine. But we are in a new age, and that's not really what we can do anymore, right? Women have jobs too, and that's cool. I think that's the preferable way for it to be. I'm not a necessarily traditional cat, so I appreciate the fact that a woman can bring to the table more than just like, oh, I got one slippery pussy. Let me tell you, I poop out kids. It's like it's nothing, like water, like turning on a faucet. I don't know why she has a transatlantic accent, but here we are. But I got a baby. See, no, but. That used to be your lot in life as a lady. That was you. That was who you were. That was what you did. If you didn't have kids, you were the oddball. If you didn't have a husband, you were the oddball. But now, it's like, because otherwise you'd be hit. There was no divorce. You didn't do that. You couldn't initiate. I mean, you could, but you had to be in some really particularly bad scenario for you as a woman to initiate a divorce, and it only got worse the further you go back. And so we wanted to change that because it was incredibly imbalanced, in my opinion, and in the opinion of the American government and most governments worldwide in first world countries and I guess second world countries that never get any respect. So we were like, okay, let's make it to where women can initiate a divorce. Let's make it to where women do have a vote and a say-so and a choice and this, that, and the other. Cool, I'm game for all of that shit. And then it got to a point where they said, hey, and this wasn't a law, it was more social than anything. They were like, hey, you do realize you can basically just say he did whatever the fuck and get away with it, right? And you might even get paid for it. So nobody is really going to call you on it. I mean, he can do stuff, but there's all this legal red tape, and it gets really muddy financially, and he has to pay you to leave him. So let's just say you get a divorce, and you want 50% of the shit he has. Well, that 50% is for you. That's not for the kids. What else do you want? You want another 25% of whatever he brings in? Dope. You want to have a job? All right, cool. Now you get to keep all your money and half of his plus 25% for the kids. They're situated. They're done. Like that's fine. They are not going to want for shit. in the near future. Same with that one chick on fucking TikTok or Instagram. I can't remember which. Where she was like, yeah, basketball players are fucking dumb. You can fuck them and have a kid by them and make like a... Yeah.
Brittany Renner.
Oh, fucking Brittany Renner. That, ooh. Like, made a post talking about tell your sons to watch their ass or something like that because she's coming for them. I was like, that is the most rapey shit. Like, dudes can't do that type of stuff. We are now at a point where ladies can do things and say things that now men can't do. And the balance is tipped. And it happened very, very rapidly towards the turn of the century. I'm not saying that it was for the worse. I'm just saying it is getting worse as we go along, and it needs to be balanced. That is my whole view on marriage, is that it needs to be balanced. I don't need the government to tell me, hey, we'll give you a tax write-off if you tie yourself to somebody. Because now we have millionaires and billionaires who get married to people they don't even like, let alone love, for a tax write-off so they can keep even more of America's money. And that's fucking crazy. You've incentivized tying yourself to somebody. Like, that's not love. Have you ever seen a president and their wife? I'm not going to call out anybody in specific. Just look back through them. President, wife, and kids if they have them. And just look back and see which ones of them look happy and which ones of them look like they don't know each other. You know?
We're not going to call out any names.
Yeah, I'm not saying anybody because I'm not trying to piss anybody off. That's not the point of this. I'm just saying go back. There are several.
And yeah, but that's modern day marriage today. And unfortunately, there are drawbacks. And sometimes those drawbacks do outweigh the benefits. But like you said, it's about finding the balance and in the relationship and finding out what do each of you bring to the table, no matter what kind of marriage you are in. Just finding someone where you benefit each other, and it's a mutual beneficial relationship where one person's supporting, one person's leading, or you can both take turns leading. However it works, that's what modern marriage is supposed to be like.
But you should figure that out. But you should figure that out while dating. That is the huge caveat there. You should not be figuring out who leads, who wants how many kids, blah, like all this big shit after you put the ring on it. That's stupid. I don't care what anybody says, and I'll fight y'all. Like, that is real fucking dumb.
Definitely. I'm not sure real quick. I'm not sure. Oh, there's some clap emojis. Okay. We appreciate you.
Absolutely.
We appreciate whoever's right there. I'm not sure I'm not sure if you can see that mic thing down at the bottom left.
Yeah.
On the screen. I'm not sure what that means. I'm not sure if someone was trying to join the talk or what that was.
I think the same guy did try to come in as a co-host, and they left us some messages. But I know we've had some issues trying to play stuff before, and the recordings come out bad. By the way, Genius as Fuck on YouTube if you want to hear the whole thing. So I wasn't going to play it until afterwards. I might put them onto the end of the video on YouTube.
And right, and that's Genius as Fuck, JENIUS, Genius AF, Big AF on YouTube. For my guy who's in here listening to us, we appreciate the listen.
Absolutely.
Solo, you want to go ahead and wrap this up today?
Yeah. Like he said, this has been Genius as Fuck, Little J, Big AF. Appreciate you listening to the conversation. Make sure that you like it, comment on YouTube, share it with your friends, whoever you want to talk to, or whoever you think needs to hear it. And lastly, and never leastly, make sure you move with love in your heart, and in all things, peace. I'll talk to you next time, all right?
All right, man. Peace out.
Peace.